Well, you know what? Sometimes you're sad when a season's over, and I'll be honest with you, I was still sad towards the end of the game Sunday because I was like, I don't see these guys again for 8 months. And it's like, do you know that Steve Wilkos meme where it's like, this is your man? Yeah. And you love him. Yeah. That was me with the season, where it's like, this team was terrible,
Yes,
but I
yeah,
still love
absolutely.
them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Tough because you're watching them just be absolutely abhorrent, and you're like, wow, this team is like terrible. And then you're watching them win the game against the Bills, and you're like, none of this matters, but like it's fun to win. So you're like, cool. And you're like, all right, I know that I'm not going to see this team again for another, however many months, another 8 months. We're not going to watch them play actual meaningful football. And it's a little bittersweet, but, after the season that we went through, I'm fine. I'm fine with, a little break.
I am too. I also viewed Sunday's game as kind of like the same as the Jets game at the end of the 2020 season, where
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
cool.
just we're here for the wins. Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I know that it obviously cost the Patriots the number one overall pick, but my hot take is that I don't really care.
No, it's not that I don't really care. It's just for me, I don't think it really matters because you and I were DMing and you put it into great context where you're just like, there's no guarantees. Oh, if you get number one, you're going to trade for Kings Hall and do this because for some reason, I feel like there's a subsection of our fans now that'll be happy with whatever happens. And then there'll be like the coaching search. Whoever they hire, there's going to be a subsection that's going to be pissed off and there's
Oh,
going to be a subsection
absolutely,
that's
absolutely.
happy.
There's already so much division. I think that's just gonna be part of it, right? There are people who want to go back to, what they know, what's familiar, what's comfortable. We want a name that we know. It's
Mm-hmm.
obviously Mike Vrabel being the leading man is going to be that, and then you have other people, myself included, who watch what other teams can do, right? We watched the Detroit Lions play Sunday Night Football. We watched them a ton in prime time this year, and it never got stale because like that offense is innovative. They're doing so many things, and they're doing them from perfectly classic situations. It's not like they're breaking out new formations that no one's ever seen before. They're just like, yeah, but like instead of doing it this way, we're gonna put the right tackle on a jet sweep. Like that's what we're gonna do. So like things like that, I'm like, yeah, cool. So obviously, you know, people like myself are really in on Ben Johnson, right? The
Yep.
offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And so if and when it becomes Mike Vrabel, the Johnson folks are going to be pissed. And if it ends up being neither, then everyone's going to be pissed.
But that's the thing because like Aaron Glenn's name came up today as he's
Yes.
going to interview, which
Yeah.
for everyone going, oh, it's on either. Look what he's done with the defense
I
this year
think
that's
he's a
depleted.
phenomenal coach. The reason I didn't expect him to get any looks is because I just don't really think the Patriots are going to go with a defensive head coach if it's not Vrabel. I think if they're
Yeah.
going to go defensive, it's going
Yeah.
to be very Vrabel. If they opt to go offensive, it's going to be anyone else. But I can't see too many defensive coordinators on the interview list. I just don't really see that being a thing.
No, I think they do want to reach out to him though, just for his expertise, because when
Yep.
you look at what he's done, like, look, he's lost Aiden Hutchinson, and I'll say this too, very underrated player in the NFL, and Aleem McNeil up the middle as well.
Oh my gosh, he's so good. He is legitimately one of my favorite players, and I talk about him every time I get the opportunity because like he's a former third round pick. No one's really paying all that much attention. I'm like, but he's like stout. He is so strong. He is like physically speaking, he is like a
Yep.
powerful man, stout in the middle of that defense, and they're gonna miss him in the playoffs.
There's one thing when you say that, it always brings me back to I think it was the 2014 Combine, and what's his name? Mike Mayock's like, look at that, like
Oh,
basically,
look at that bubble butt.
yeah, look at that bubble butt.
Yeah.
My wife did not believe that was a thing, and I showed her the clip, and it's the way he says bubble butt, and it's just like
Yeah.
so.
He
Like,
said it
I
like
think it was Greg Robinson, by the way.
yeah, it was like, oh, that's a really weird thing to say about a guy, but like it makes sense in the context of what he was saying. It's just out of context. Like, look at that bubble butt. I'm like, come on, bud.
But the other thing I want to say too is though, because they also have other guys as well, like Kirby Joseph had 2 killer games back to back.
Phenomenal player.
Put Brock Purdy in a blender.
Yep.
And then I'm blanking on his name, but there's one dude who just put Justin Jefferson through hell. And if you do that, I think
Oh, Amik Robertson. Yeah,
yes,
tiny
Amik
little.
Robertson.
Yep, he played with the Raiders last year. He was really good with them. Just a little undersized, but he's a good player.
Yeah, so that's the thing with Detroit, where I feel like they just want to get like different looks and different angles of everything else. The way I look at it, and because also I'll be honest with you, there is a third candidate I would have loved to have seen, but he's being retained by his team, and that's Drew Pensing from the Arizona Cardinals.
Okay.
Yeah, just because like I know it's not the most attractive name out there, but you've seen I know Arizona fizzled out towards the end of the year, but I believe it was Ben Solak or someone else who back early, when they early forecast, like, hey, these guys could be in the mix. His name was
Yep.
coming up. So,
And who was it? I believe the Saints had reached out, and were they rebuffed when they reached out for the interview
yeah.
request? Oh wow,
Or not
good
even
for him.
rebuffed. I think it was like announced immediately that they're basically retaining their entire staff.
Oh,
And I'm going to bring this up to you because this came up because our famous cooked conversation from earlier in the summer. Remember how people
which
abuse
one?
it?
The cook? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think washed is another one because someone posted Marvin Harrison stats and saying, "Is Marvin Harrison Jr. washed?" I'm like, he's
He's a
a rookie.
rookie. Like what? Oh my, he can't be washed. He's a rookie.
Like people are doing this with Bijan.
Oh
This is the thing I hate about this time of
God.
the year too, is that so many people like, look, I'm not saying you and I are like draft nuts or like nerds, like, cause like, look, there's people who really dive deep,
Dive
deep,
in, yeah,
deep.
for sure.
Like I dive deep, but I don't go like, there's people who dive like, 10, 20 feet below sea level. Um, who go that deep and like they're the ones who pay attention. And there's some people who just like, oh, like they get their feet wet and they'll see like, oh, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's supposed to be great. It's like last year, remember Bijan Robinson, he's supposed to be great. Kyle Pitts, they're all these generational players to where if they're not quote unquote amazing, it's viewed as like, oh, he wasn't worth the pick or he wasn't viewed as this. And now if you look at Bijan, he's established himself as a hell of a running back. And I think
Oh, yeah, he
next
had a
year,
huge year this year. Yep.
I'm saying that's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. next year because I'll be honest with you, Arizona was one of my teams to watch for in 2024. I have another one in 2025, but I'll save it towards the end. I just wanted to bring that up, how people are already calling him that. I'm just like,
Yeah, I don't really understand that because it's not even like he was bad, right? What he had like
no.
70 catches, 887 yards or something like that, and 9, 10 touchdowns or something like that. Like that's
Yeah.
a pretty good year. Like if you draft a rookie and that's the the production he's giving you on a team that's not very good, then what are we talking about here?
It's like, look at Malik. It's like he didn't do what Malik Neighbors did, but still, the fact that Malik Neighbors just did what he did with terrible quarterback play
Yeah.
just goes to show. But the one thing too is, I'll say this: I enjoyed the game with the Patriots and the Cardinals just for that matchup there because Christian Gonzalez put that man's life in hell.
Yeah, he was clamped up. He had the 21-yard catch that came on the mesh concept.
Yep.
Gonzo got picked off, and that almost never happened. So first time for everything, and so Marvin Harrison had 21 there, and then from there had nothing against Gonzo. And I'm like, yeah, that was a hell of a game.
Yeah, but going back to our team though, and I know everyone likes to harp on certain things with this team. Look, I don't know why the Bengals are going after Covington. That's just me, but I'll say this, and I know some people are like, "Oh, Gerard should have got the second chance." There's that one article that came out today through the Athletic that
I did read it. Yep.
about the
Playing the cards on the plane.
playing
Yeah.
the cards in the plane, but it's not even that for me. It was the throwing Van Pelt under the bus after that game, and then just I'll be honest with you, as soon as like I didn't watch the press conference fully on Sunday, but like look, I follow enough people on here and including one Miss Weller, who were in the room for it, and you got the vibe immediately. I'm like, he's done. And for everyone who's saying, oh, it's not a fair chance, it's this or this. I'm like, guys, Kraft, and then for Monday, I'll say this, Kraft could not have handled that any better. He went in there, hey, I screwed up because I know a lot of people say like, oh, they don't want to be dysfunctional, this or this. I like the fact that he always has a standard and he holds this organization to such a high standard. It's not like, because we all know at the end of the day, all 32 owners win. We all know that. They're all pockets are all lined up. Look, right now it's not the best time to be a Pats fan, but Kraft knows deep down, well, two things now. One, how south it can go, but then also two, what you get for good rewards. And he knows that if he gives his fan base what they want, they're going to be happy again. Now, we're not saying they're going to get the 12 Super Bowl titles in our lifetime, which would be awesome, but I don't know if they will do it. But you know what I mean? The fact that there is that standard there that's been created to saying, hey, we want to be a winning organization. We want to have a culture. And, so that's where I truly take good pride in knowing that we have good ownership. It's not like some teams like how look at I know too, like what you're saying with like, I know your tweet about Jacksonville and even the Raiders, how it's like, oh, hey, everything was fine. And then all of a sudden it's, oh no, Pierce is gone. And like Doug Peterson's gone. And then Trent, I have 9 lives like a cat. Balky is still laying around in Jacksonville.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that is so, that was just the Jaguars handling that the way they did is so strange to me because like, I don't think we've seen a universally panned GM like Trent Baalke in a very long. Maybe Doug Whaley when he was with the Bills.
Yeah,
like maybe him, but like for the most part, I've not seen such a reviled general manager to kind of like stick around, and he's sticking around. So that's interesting to me. On the topic of Gerard Mayo, though, I think it's interesting because understand why he was fired, obviously. Like
Yep.
we watched that. That was a shit show. And it wasn't just that the team was bad. It was just like it felt like directionless, right? I said, the
Yeah.
Patriots felt like a rudderless ship just doing donuts in the ocean. Like they were just like kind of there, and you know, God, they weren't even like bad enough to be like kind of fun. They were just like, oh, this is just like bad. This is not great. And then the game would end, and Jerron Mayo would go up there and say something dumb, and then have to walk it back the next day or what, yada yada yada. So I understand that. I understand why he was fired. But it's really weird because when he was hired, I felt like, you know, prior to him being hired, I like Jerron Mayo. I'm like, oh, in a few years, he's going to be such a good head coach.
Yeah.
And then they hired him, and I was like, ooh, it's a little soon. Like,
Yeah.
guy's hasn't even been a coordinator, right? He was a position coach, and then he was just a nebulous defensive guy. He worked
Yeah.
on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah, we know he still worked on inside linebackers, but he had more to his title after signing the extension, prior to the start of last season, 23. He signed the extension to stay with the Patriots, and we knew that he was like assistant assistant head coach or something like that. And
Yeah.
basically, Kraft came out and said, hey, we're going to be kind of lining this guy up, for the future. And so they hired him a little prematurely because they moved on from Bill a little prematurely. As far as their succession plan goes, I know people, will argue down, well, Bill needed to go. He sucked, whatever. It's not really the point I'm making. The point I'm making is, as far as the Patriots were concerned, as Bob Kraft and all them, they hadn't planned ahead of time to be like, hey, we're moving on from Bill after 23, right? Because otherwise the succession plan doesn't make a ton of sense. So it looked like they moved on a little early because the results were really bad, which is fine, whatever. And so Gerard got bumped up a little early. And he was clearly not a match for the job, right? He was a little in over his head, he kind of had no idea what he was doing, and that's fine. I just then think if you're going to make the decision to hire him, right, against, and everyone's kind of just like, I don't really know how I feel about that. If you're going to make the decision to hire him, I think you have to give him that runway. Even though it was a shit show and I absolutely understand firing him, I think it just looks bad if we're just like, hey, this guy is the future, and we went on a trip and it was mind blowing, and I just watched how great a guy this guy was, and I knew he'd be the one to lead the organization, and then for 17 games later just be like, hey, actually we're just going to move on from him because the results weren't good and it wasn't going to work. I understand that. I understand why people say he didn't get a fair shot, just because we knew the roster was bad. We knew like there'd be some growing pains because he'd literally not done this before, right? Because prior to coming on to the Patriots and being their inside linebackers coach, he'd literally done no coaching, right? It's not like he was out there like grinding college or grinding the high school circuit or anything like that. It was just like, yeah, he was working at Optum, and then he was doing quick slants with Tom Curran and them, and then all of a sudden he's coaching on the sidelines.
Yeah.
So it was premature putting him in that spot, and I also think a little premature getting rid of him, given what you had told us, what you sold us on last year. If you're like, hey, this is going to be the guy, and 12 months later he is not the guy, I think it's fair that people are like, crap, what the fuck are you doing? Because you told us he was the man. All the same, the results do speak for themselves. So I'm not torn up about him being fired. I understand both sides of the argument, right? I understand, giving him the heave-ho. I also understand, like, maybe you shouldn't have moved on as quickly as you did. What I don't understand, though, what I don't love, and I know a lot of people I've seen kind of disagree with this. I don't love keeping Elliott Wolf. I think he gets, and I've tweeted this multiple times throughout the entire offseason, into the regular season, and then again after the season. I think he skated a lot on the state of the roster. I think it's really easy to be like, hey, the roster sucks because of Bill. And I'm like, sure, he inherited a bad roster. Absolutely. Yeah. We're not going to argue that, but like, Bill left him a bad roster. The roster still being bad in January, though, you can't be like, hey, that's all on Bill, because he had a free agency period to make moves and did not. And then he had the draft. And I understand his point of view, right? He had the statement the other day that was a little controversial. Even that wasn't as controversial as I think it should. I thought that was that was bad. That was as bad as the "you said it, not me" when Gerard threw AVP under the bus. I think Wolf did the same to Gerard when he said, "Hey, I thought there'd be more player development." And then it's like, cool. So you're basically saying, "Hey, our draft picks are probably fine. Our coaching was terrible."
Yeah.
Which I can obviously understand that side of the argument. I just don't think that if anyone else were to come in here and be like, "Hey, for our tackle position, we have currently 0 viable tackles on the roster," I think our answer is going to be Chick Okorafor. I don't think anyone who makes that move should be able to just like skate and be like, hey, it's the bad coaching. It's like, no. That was a bad personnel move. Like that
Yep.
doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like that, those are the things where I'm like, I don't really understand. To be like, hey, you know, our receiver situation was terrible. And I'm like, right, but you didn't really add anyone. You added KJ Osborne. And I think there's some validity to the, you know, hoping for more player development, because prior to coming here, KJ Osborne knew how to play football. He got here, didn't know how to play football all of a sudden. So I think there's some validity to that. But I do think, again, if these are the moves being made, if you're like, hey, our big moves are going to be, our highlight moves are going to be Antonio Gibson, who owns, so cool.
Yeah.
Austin Hooper, who's fine. Chuks Okorafor, I mean, let's be real here. And KJ Osborne, you can't just say like, oh, well, it's all on the coaching. Like, these are not like grade A, like, hey, we brought him in and they're going to hit the ground running kind of guys. They were flyers, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I just don't think the GM should, I mean, just completely scot-free too. That's the worst part. Like, it literally just scot-free. It's just like, it wasn't me. And everyone's like, okay, cool. We'll give Wolf another chance. And I'm like, I guess, but like, what happens next year though? Like, if he passes on free agency again, because I don't think that was a fluke. That wasn't like a, you know, like,
No.
one-time thing, because he had stated, hey, we're going to be a draft and develop team. He came from the Packers. And when he was with the Packers, that is how they operated. They were just kind of like, hey, we're just going to draft guys. We're going to extend our own guys. We're really not in the business of bringing in a bunch of free agents, right? That was him. And it was Ted Thompson was over there. And that's back when he was still the GM. So it's not like that was a fluke. It's not like, oh, you know, like, oh, it's just 1 year he kind of took off from free agency. So it's like, cool, if this is going to be the MO going forward, unless he gets an edict, obviously, to kind of up the ante in free agency, if he is going to go with his plan of like, hey, we are just going to be a draft and develop team, then we just need to see those draft pick hits. If we have 8 draft picks, I think it was 8, or maybe it was 9. It was
5 in the
like
first
that.
5 in the first 100. I know that.
5 in the first 100 and 1 can play. That's not good enough. That's simply, especially if you're going to pass on free agency. If you have multiple avenues to improve your roster at any point during the offseason, you can't tell me, hey, we're going to sit out one and you need to just trust me on the draft picks, especially because the draft picks didn't do anything. So that's why I'm like, I don't love, you know, Wolf going. Also, I just don't love the keeping the GM from the previous regime as you bring in a new coach, because that literally never goes well. Like, that just doesn't go well. You have the outliers, like right with the Texans right now, everyone's like, oh, well, the Texans did it and they're just fine. I'm like, yeah, but the Texans also went through 2 coaches prior to that with the same one GM. It didn't work for either of the 2 before. And you struck on this one. So you're like, oh, well, it worked. I'm like, not really. It's not something that totally works. You kind of want these guys in at the same time. You kind of want them on the same page. You kind of want a more, and the word of the year has been collaborative. Now, what does it look like when the owner brings in a new coach, and now the new coach is now reporting to him, right? Like, where's the collaboration in that? Like, Elliot Wolf is picking the players, and then coach to be named later is coaching the players. Well, if the draft picks don't work out this year, the coach is probably going to look at the owner like, hey, man, you got to talk to the GM. Yeah. And at that point, there is no pass. So I don't know. I don't love that.
Because like, I don't think they're going to do another. There's no way they're going to do another one and done, not hire someone. Because like, I know when we're saying this too, because the 24 draft class, it's still to be judged. But like, when you have a lot of the times, like, look, there's a lot of, for right now, swings and misses. Obviously, look, you got the golden goose, but that was a layup. Getting Drake May, you know, hey, he's good. It's just the fact now that our quarterback is awesome means our quarterback is awesome.
Yep.
The big thing for me is, so a couple of things with Elliot Wolf. One, I just keep him for the continuity for now. That was more than anything, just because, look, last year I understood the whiff on free agency because we all knew the team was going to be bad. We all knew that. This year, though, I think it's more imperative than ever because we're expected to take that next step, because you have the quarterback, and because now you have this 2-year window before he goes knocking on Mr. Kraft's door and saying, hey, I want Dak Prescott's making this. I'm better than Dak Prescott. I see, because we all know CJ Stroud next year is going to do that. There's no quarterback this year, which is shocking that's going to do that. But then again, that quarterback class is throwing interceptions to Michael Pierce. So what do I know? But God, I got it back on thing. But with this team, though, like this year, like, you can't just say, oh, we were outbid, or like, oh, people can't use, like, what do players start using? Oh, they didn't want to come to Massachusetts.
Yep.
Like last year, we all knew, look, this team was going to be bad. This team, if by this time next year they have a season like San Francisco just had, minus the injuries, where, you know, it's 6-11, 7-10, 8-9, I think that's expected. I don't think this year there's no more like, you know, oh, hey, go 4-13, or, you know, win your last game in the last 2 weeks of this, or win your 4th game in December. No, Next year, I think it's win your 4th game well before November. You
Yep.
know, because if you look at next year's schedule too, it's not difficult. This year they had a difficult schedule going in. This year, if you look at all the opponents, it's the AFC North, which we don't know as of now where every team's going to be.
Yep.
You have the NFC South, which is the NFC South, even though I'm going to spoil it or say it right now. I think Carolina's starting to cook, and I'm not saying they're going to be good, but I think they got.
I think they can be good. I don't see why not. I
Like,
think if they get themselves a legitimate receiver, I think that they could absolutely be a good team.
Not one that eats raccoon.
Man, I like Leggett, but like he had a really weird kind of year. There were moments where you're just like, oh, that looks like the guy that, you know, the guy who was like dominating Carolina. And then there are other times you're like, man, just catch the football. Just catch the football. If you do that, you'll be great. Just catch the fucking football.
And then I'll say this too, because Kyrie coined this very perfectly to me a couple weeks ago. And then Atlanta, who actually, more than anything, perfect insurance and policy, because I think next year Atlanta's going to be that team that at first they're going to get off to a hot start because no one's going to really know what to think of Michael Penix Jr. And then I think once you get film on him, that's where you're going to kind of figure him out. And then Tampa, we don't know what they're going to be. And New Orleans, I keep saying this, they're going to have to drift through the wilderness the next few years. I think it's going to be tough. I've always said this with them, with their cap situation. Either go for it all or strip it to the bones. I think they're going towards strip it to the bones. And then if you look at the rest of their matchups, they play the Raiders, the Titans, and the Giants. Those are all going to be teams with rookie quarterbacks who, look, 2 of those teams are just directionless and bad. Like, I'd rather be like, I know Kraft went back on his word or what you said earlier. I would rather have that than doing what John Mara just did and have your entire fan base start to look. There's been some Giants fans that are starting to say, like, I'm not saying they want him to sell, but like you're getting that restlessness that we've seen with George McCaskey and the Bears towards John Mara. I don't want fans getting like that towards Robert Kraft. So that's why I think he did what he did. Because if you return Wolf and Mayo, everyone's going to look at you and go, okay, we went 4-13 and we're terrible, and our coach says the wrong thing at the wrong time. The fuck. Meanwhile, now you have basically probably an understanding with Elliot Wolf where it's like, look, this year you have to hit, because I got all those top 100 picks. Which that Matthew Judon trade now, my goodness, that was amazing.
Yeah, right.
But you got to hit on at least 3 of them. And I'm here to say this right now, but you know how I say the whole thing about fans being pissed off? If they go Abdul Carter, which I'm on board for that.
Yeah.
There's going to be fans saying, why don't you go with tackle? Why don't you go with this?
I know, but they have no edge rush, and he is so explosive.
And those players don't grow on trees. You can't
you can't just force a pick if it's not there. Yeah, I know. Abdul Carter is such an interesting one because like he's a name that's getting buzz like on the Patriots streets, if you will. Yeah. And I keep seeing people be like, no, absolutely not. I'm like, have you watched him? Because like, yeah, why not? Right? Like, sign me up. Like, I just know that like. People get so locked into needs. They're like, oh, you absolutely need, you need a tackle. And I'm like, yes, you do need a tackle. You also need an edge rusher. Like, what? Like, you don't have one. Like, we were starting Yannick Ngakoue at left edge because, like, we had no one else. You know what I mean? Like, It was Keon White just running around with dudes. Curtis Jacobs was one of the starting edge rushers for, like, a huge portion of the season. Who the hell is Curtis Jacobs? You know what I mean? Like that's where I'm like, what are we talking about? They need an edge.
I had that moment on Sunday with number 35. I'm like, I literally look at my
watch. Same. I was like, who is this?
Who are you? Just like, okay, I know I watch this team and I follow it very intently, but I'm like, who the fuck are you? And you're making the seatbelt stuff? I'm like, Jesus, I know Alex Austin does that, which
I didn't understand. I was like, I also, because I'm with you, you follow the team closely, you know all the transactions, you're like, all right, cool. But then you're like, oh, Truman Jones just made a really nice tackle for loss. I'm like, who the fuck is Truman Jones? That was someone I Googled. I literally had to Google because I was like, oh, that was a really nice tackle for loss. And I'm looking at him like, who the hell's 54? Yeah. Truman Jones. And I'm like, who the hell's Truman Jones? But these are the guys that are like playing major snaps for you because you have no edge rush. Don't tell me, well, we can't take Carter. Why? Because you need a tackle. You'll figure it out. Like at this point, there is not a position outside of punter that the Patriots can take in the first round that I'd be like, oh my God, what an egregious waste of a pick. I'd probably be like, yeah, because they don't have anyone. Like they don't.
But that's just it, because there is going to be people that go, it's like, oh, go one way, go another way. But there's a person on Twitter that I recently followed, and he gives me so much insight. Andrew De Silva, by the way.
Oh, he's fantastic. You
Yeah,
just followed him. He's a fantastic
he
follow.
just came up my thing, and he literally posts about this player from Oregon, Joshua Connerly, the offensive lineman out of Oregon, where I'm like, you know what? If you go Abdul Carter at 4, and then if you go lineman in the late first round, early second round, because my original plan was, and I don't know how reasonable this would have been, was to get like Banks or Campbell and I love the memes too, where it's like, if Campbell comes to the Patriots, he's gonna be a bust. He goes anywhere else, he's going to Canton, Ohio. But get him, and then I don't know how realistic this is, but get Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State.
Yeah.
Or
In
convince
round
the
2.
draft board to let you get Jeremiah Smith right now, but we all know that's not happening.
He is so good. What an exciting player he is.
And him and Ryan Williams in 2 years. That's
to
the
be
best.
so young like that, to be so young and that physically gifted. I'm like, wow, this guy was in high school last year. That's crazy.
Dan Lanning fucked around and found out in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I just, when he would just, when we get to talking about draft needs, I need people to just like not lock in on just tackle and not lock in on just the first round, because the Patriots have way more needs that can be addressed in one round, obviously. And so, to your point, we are going to need those picks to hit, and we need more than just one. You can't walk away from a draft class with just one. Again, though, I do think there's time on the 24 class. There's time is on their side. I think people are too gung-ho in the first place, but if we're just going on what we saw, I think they're right to be like a little concerned, right? Like the most productive player
on a football Sunday in this economy.
Javon Baker caught his first football in this economy. So, we're getting there. Jalen Pope didn't even play. That was tough. But I think we can only hope for a little improvement from the offensive line picks, right? Because Caden Wallace didn't even start. They didn't even give him the start. For whatever reason, we just decided that Trey Jacobs was going to be the guy. Whatever. And Layden Robinson obviously has looked much better over the last few weeks since coming back from injury, since being reinserted into the lineup, coming back from that injury. So it's like, cool, we can kind of see a little of what they were getting at, but we need more than just like, right now we are going on faith alone. And that's just not feeling super great, right? The roster is a bunch of rookies, first-year players, and second-year players, and a bunch of practice squatters, because like there's no one else. So the Patriots need to, step up and do something come this offseason as far as player acquisition goes. And I really don't want to hear the same thing I heard last year, because I didn't buy it last year. I'm not going to buy it this year, where people were like, well, it was a bad free agent class. I'm like, no, it was a fine free agent class, because most free agent classes kind of look like that, where everyone's like, oh, they have this guy, and this guy. And I'm like, yeah, all those guys are going to get tagged. Like, by the time we get to free agency, what we have left every year is more or less what we had left in 24, right? So when people are like, well, you couldn't get a slam dunk starting tackle, and I'm like, you didn't need a slam dunk starting tackle. You need someone who could actually play the football, play the game. You know what I mean? Like, I needed someone who could last more than 12 snaps.
Not get cooked by Von Miller in game 18 of the regular, game 17 of the regular season.
Like, these are the things, like, these are the players you should be looking. I'm not saying like, hey, you go out there and give me Tyron Smith, but like, give me someone who I know, like, all right, cool. He may not be great, but he's not going to get us killed. You signed a bunch of guys who get you killed. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
there's one guy on the offensive line this year who I used to crap on a lot, but I'll be honest with you, not really impressed me, but like, he did enough to where I'm like, hey, if he's back at 25, and I'm fine with it. And that's Viridian Lowe. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
with you.
He
caught a touchdown.
Up and down. Yeah, he did catch a touchdown. It was pretty sweet. He was really up and down.
He had some moments, but for the most part, towards the end, you didn't really hear his name get called. And with linemen, if you don't hear from them.
Yeah, well, the week 18 game was kind of tough. He was having a rough go of it, but
I meant like before, like week 3, like 4, like
in the middle there. Yeah, I can understand that. I think he is someone who should be on the roster. I think he is someone who should compete to start, and I think he is someone that if and when he loses the starting job, like, you're fine. Like, you're fine with him as your swing tackle. If you're just like, hey, we need him to play a few games, and hold us over, or hey, we need you to play 40 snaps for us and get us to next week, by all means, fine. Him being your unquestioned 17-game starter is asking a lot, especially because, and I don't generally buy into the idea of guys being injury prone, because I don't really think that makes a ton of sense, but he is someone who just takes a little while to kind of come back from whatever he's dealing with, right? Like, he gets nicked up and then he's just like on the injury report for like a month and a half with that same injury, and that's, I'm not I don't knock any player on toughness. I don't really think there's such a thing as a soft NFL player. That doesn't really
Yeah.
make a ton of sense to me either. But he is someone who like he gets hurt and he's just kind of hurt. Now he plays. So like credit to him for that. That's why I'm like, tough as shit. Like some of these injuries, I'm like, I'm not playing. Like I can't even play with a cold. Like I can't even get up and go to work. And I'm a therapist. Like I'm not doing anything physical. Like I just get up and go to work. Like if I'm feeling real sick, not gonna happen for me. These guys are playing through like really serious injuries, and I get that, but it hurts his effectiveness when he's just like dinged up and he's out there just trying to make it happen. He's dinged up.
That's it. That's it. Because we all know at the end of the season, guys are playing with stuff. We all know that like by the end of the season, no matter what, hey, there's maybe not broken bones. Like I'm sorry, the Fred Warner thing. I like that stuff like that should get announced. Where it's not like
he's like, oh yeah, he's playing with like a broken fibula or he's like a chipped bone in his ankle, and I'm like, really? Well, that's okay, I guess.
Because the NFL has to release its injury reports because, like, for example, hockey, it could just be, lower body injuries out for a few weeks. Meanwhile, NFL, it has to be, it gets announced and it has to be reported because of gambling. That's the other thing with there. But no, like with the Patriots offensive line this year, like I said, I put the fingers in my mouth gun in my mouth because I don't need to see Jamontre Jacobs ever play football for the Patriots again.
Holy cow, right?
You got cooked by Von Miller. No. Right guard, Michael Wenu, look, he had some rough times this year. You just got to keep him at right guard is what it is.
Yeah, I think he's someone who could really benefit from a little continuity.
Yep.
He is like, it looks like he is out there just trying to like, will the line single-handedly will the line into something, playable, and it's hurting his play because he's like out there. He's dropping his guys a little early. You're looking at him play right guard. She's dropping guys a little early to try to pick up the stunt on his left side, over the center. They're having issues over there. So he's like trying to help out over there, or he's trying to help on, Demontre Jacobs' guy, and, guys are blowing through his gap. And it's like, yeah, but these are things happening because, like, he is literally the only good player on the line, like, at this moment. Obviously, Vederian Lowe is Vederian Lowe and all that. But, you spent large chunks of the season starting Michael Jordan at left guard, right? Like, City So wasn't even active, this past week. And it's like, what happened to him? That's where I can understand Elliot Wolf's gripe with the player development, because like that was supposed to be like one of your guys. Like he was supposed to, even if you didn't think, hey, City Show's going to be a starter for us, you thought, hey, if we need to in a pinch, we can roll So out there and we'll be all right. But he was an absolute liability, and it's like, well, what the hell happened? Because last year he was, I think, a little overrated, right? I thought he was a really good run blocker. He had a little issues in the passing game.
Yeah, that's
fine. But knowing that as his floor, like, all right, cool. If this is the worst he's going to be, if he's going to be like good in the run game, but like kind of shaky in the pass game, we can work with that. But he was like bad at both this year. And you're like, well, I don't know what the fuck happened. So in those situations, I understand the gripe. Like, we just kind of need better guys. Like, but you're also not going to, and this is where, again, I'm taking it to Elliot Wolf to like improve the roster before the draft. You're not going to start 4 rookies on your offensive line. Teams don't do that. So it is imperative that they get some better frontline players, some better top line players. Again, I'm not saying go out there and find me a Zach Martin, because you're not going to get one of those in free agency.
God, no.
But you need a Patrick McCary. You need someone who can just like, you stick him in there and you're like, all right, cool, we are good at left guard until next year. We'll figure it out after. Like, and opting to not engage in free agency isn't something that I think the Patriots can afford to do, because the roster is not good enough for that, right? I think it's easy to be just a draft and develop team when you have guys in place already. When your roster looks like this, you can't just be like, well, we'll just draft, because otherwise what you're saying is we'll just play rookies all over the place. And we know that that's not how the NFL works.
Yeah, no, you have to get experience. You have to get that continuity. You have to get that leadership, because when you have those things, it goes a long way. You can't just go, oh, we're going to wait. And I know, here's the thing too. People are going to get pissed off if they don't spend a lot of money, because we know that's just how this goes. But the cap's going up every year. And you know what though? There are a couple teams that have money that scare me, like the Arizona Cardinals have like $75 or $80 million to spend. So do the LA Chargers. The Las Vegas Raiders are up there, but they're probably not going to spend money either, because they've been the complete opposite of a destination to go to. They're a destination for away fans, but there's nothing to cheer for there. But I've been coming up with a scenario with a player on the Vegas Raiders I would like to see the Patriots trade for. No, it's not Max Crosby, and no, it's not Jacoby Myers reunion. Brock Bowers is taken off and is a dog. Why don't you give Vegas a call and see if Michael Mayer is available? Because I think tight end's a low-key underrated need for this team.
Yeah, I don't know if it's underrated. I think they just need a tight end. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that 100%. They just
Yeah.
need a tight end.
You
I
get a
don't know
third
if
guy in
Mayer,
there.
huh?
I'm saying you get a third guy in the room. You bring back Hooper on a cheap deal. Hunter Henry signed, and just maybe see, hey, can we get Mayer for like a fourth round pick, for example?
Yeah, I don't know that Vegas would do that. I don't really know why they would do that. Like, I think you can probably just build the
Speak things into existence.
I hear you. I don't think their receiving group is that good that they're going to be like a big 11 team. Like, oh, we have to have three wide receivers at every point, so we can't play two tight ends. I'm like, I don't know, but just play them both because like Brock Bowers is that good that you can just like. Is he better than your third receiver? Yes. Is he better than your second receiver? Yes. Is Michael Mayer better than your third receiver? Yes. All right, cool. Then fuck it. Play the two tight ends. Like that just seems logical to me. But if he's available, I think that makes perfect sense. That yeah, the Patriots do need another tight end. I don't think Hooper will be back though. I don't think that makes a ton of sense. Not that he's not a good player, but because given his age and given the reason he signed here, he said, he was here, he signed because of AVP. If AVP is out like we all expect him to be, when the new coach is hired, I would just assume that Austin Hooper kind of just goes wherever wherever AVP go next or wherever someone else goes that he's comfortable with. I would expect that room to kind of just be transformed, right? We have Hunter Henry and he's going to be the top tight end and that's fine. They have Jaheim Bell. I'm going to assume that, Wolf is going to insist that he play because, he didn't play a ton. That was that was weird because again, for a team that wanted to play so many two tight ends, especially down the stretch, they were playing heavy, two tight end personnel. And Shaheem Bell still wasn't seeing a ton of reps. Now, granted, earlier in the year, he wasn't very good at football. Towards the end of the year, started kind of knowing what he was doing. So I'm sure that they're gonna want to have someone there. But I think adding a second tight end is a great idea. I think they should do that.
There was a guy from not LSU. Oh, there's Mason Taylor from LSU, but there's also another guy I've always been thinking of in the SEC, and that's from I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know his first name. I know his last name is Priestcorn because his wife comes on like TikTok all the time. Tight end from Ole Miss. He was a really reliable target for Jackson Dart, so that might be another option if you want to take a flyer on one, say in like round 4 or 5, because most of the times tight ends like that, hey, they're going to be available. But with this team though, look, if day 1 and day 2 of this draft involve at least alignment on either side of the ball, I'm going to be happy. That's what I think you need to do. And here's the thing. I'm more an Abdul Carter because here's the other thing with the difference between offensive lineman and defensive lineman. The gap between, a first round to a second round offensive lineman, it's kind of like this. First round to second round D lineman kind of just, and D edge just kind of, slowly separates where you realize, and I know, look, there's been guys who go later on like a Max Crosby, but how often do those guys really develop into something? Like, look at the Lions, for example. Look, Jacksonville was stupid and passed on Aiden Hutchinson. Lions right away. We're just like, yeah, we'll take him. The other thing I'll say, though, too, with drafting and developing, because you know how the Josh Allen one comes up every year where it's like Bills fans just completely like, oh, my God, why did we take him? We don't need this. Now they like love and grovel at him.
Yeah.
One that came up recently was when the Lions drafted Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, oh, that was fun though, because it was interesting because in real time, everyone was upset. Like all the analysts were like, "Oh, that's way too early" and all that. But there was a subsection of fans on online that day who kind of were like, I don't know, this could be a lot of fun. Like he's pretty fun. Like and that bore out because it's like, oh yes, he was really fun. Wow, good players play good when you play them. Like I think people overthought that one a lot.
Yeah.
And that he was obviously going to be a good player. Like you don't have that kind of speed and that kind of pass catching ability and not work out, right? I know that we were very deep in the trenches of running backs don't matter. That was like we were deep in that, and so everyone was like, "Yeah, see, you shouldn't have taken him. He was terrible." Blah, blah, blah. And it was like, actually, it turned out to be awesome because like he's a good player and like. We need to stop with the devaluing of the running backs. I mean, it was the same thing when the Falcons took Bijan. Everyone's like, well, they have Tyler Algier. Like, he was so good and they got him so late. Like, why would you? And I'm like, yeah, then you watch Bijan play and you're like, Yeah, well, that guy's awesome though. So
Yeah.
like, it'll work out. Jahmyr Gibbs was a fun pick in the first place.
It's always fun too because then I feel like the discourse for Saquon was completely different. Where it's like now it's like you go back and everyone's like, "Oh, Giants we didn't draft him." I'm like, yes, you do. If you see a player with the potential and with the talent there, you always go for it.
Yep.
Sometimes they go off the board with picks like that, but you know what? And here's the thing too. I want to go back to that whole like, oh, why getting first overall is not the biggest thing in the world. Because if you think about how everything's gone, Tennessee probably going to go quarterback, right? Because Will Levis, you can't play him. He's not playable. He's not good. Cleveland at 2 is a wild card. I think they can go anywhere. I don't know what they're going to do. They could go quarterback.
They should go quarterback. I just don't think they will. I think they're gonna want a veteran to compete with Deshaun Watson, and they're going to go best player available at that spot, aka I think they're just going to take Travis Hunter.
And then the Giants at 3, we all know where they're going.
Quarterback. Oh yeah. They're a threat to draft Jackson Dart IMO. I think he's going to go way earlier than people are really comfortable with right now. But it's still January, and this time last year in the draft, I was telling anyone who would listen, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think Jaden Daniels going to go early. And everyone's like, oh no, like middle of the first round. And I'm like, yeah, right, bro. He's going to go so early. And then he went, second. And then another one that everyone was like, oh, you can just get him. Don't take a quarterback in the first. Just, wait and get Michael Penix in the second round. And I'm like, that guy's not going to be there in the second round. Like, be so serious. Like, he's not going to be there. And then he went 8th. And you're like, see, I told you he wasn't going to be there. Quarterbacks get pumped, right? Like, it happens as time goes. Like, we see the tape and everyone's like, oh, the tape isn't, the tape is what the tape is. Once they start doing like the interview process, they start doing, pro days, they start meeting with guys. All of a sudden, these guys start appearing in places you don't expect. I think Jackson Dart's going to be one of those.
Yeah. You know what? I completely agree with that as well because everyone's going to be like, oh my God, this guy's not here. I have another take on Michael Penix I've always believed in. Had they lost the Sugar Bowl, he goes top 5.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Because remember, that Sugar Bowl, Washington, Texas, both him and Ewers were balling out. Mike Evers was calling my best game of his college career, yada, yada, yada. And then remember, he got killed by Michigan. Michigan just kept scrubbing him up and everything like that. So everyone's just like, oh, he's injury prone. He can't do well on the biggest stage because he lost a national freaking championship to a Michigan team that was set up to win.
Yep.
That's why I still think they had lost the Sugar Bowl. Someone would have probably traded up with the Chargers to go get him or the Cardinals. Someone would have been that crazy because think about it. It's all about recency bias with a lot of these things too. Look, Zach Wilson threw some dumb balls in his pro day and got selected second.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming on and saying that because and also too for everyone out there saying, oh, he shouldn't go here. There's a reason why I love to say let the football people do the football.
Yeah.
Don't let owners. Yeah. That's where it comes from. Where it's like that's why I have so much pressure on Elliott Wolf this year. And also too, I feel as well. I have a take with football this year, how we say the whole collaborative efforts. I think this year, if the Bears do flame out again, both Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren are gone. That's just a take I have.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm a little surprised that Ryan Poles' name wasn't brought up a little bit this year.
That was coaching.
I 100%, and I think that's the reason it didn't. But I don't know. I think their roster was a little overrated in the first. I think their defense is obviously very good. I think we liked their offensive additions a little more than we probably should have. Right? Everyone's like, "Oh, this is gonna be so this is ready made for a quarterback. Like, just go ahead and just airdrop Caleb Williams in there. It's gonna be so good. He has Keenan Allen. But then you're looking and you're like, I don't know. Like the minute their line started underperforming, I think everyone kind of should have just reneged on those takes. Like, actually, their line's not that good because you can't. I don't know. I don't think you can be a productive offense without having a good line, right? Yeah. And I think you could be a good player, like a good quarterback, without having a good line because we've seen that Drake May. I think Caleb Williams is a good quarterback. We've seen good players play behind bad lines, but I don't think you can be a good offense, and they were not a good offense. But Eberflus wasn't doing them any favor, so I get it. So, obviously Poles gets a little runway there because Eberflus was, just abhorrent. But he also should have been fired last offseason, so whatever.
They both should have gone last offseason. There's also a team right now that should have done that, but they didn't either. And I'll tell that cough. It was the Colts.
Yeah, it was Shane Steichen. Yeah. Oh man.
No, that should have been both. I've started earlier this year. I started doing a fire Chris Ballard thing because what has he done?
Oh, Chris Ballard should have been gone with the whole Jeff Saturday situation. But
Do you want to
I
know that
I
since
just
then
admit that at this point he has really well placed friends in the media.
do you want to know a fun fact about Chris Ballard?
Tell me.
So he took over in 2017. Do you know that since then, every other team in the AFC South has won the division title at least twice, and he's won 0?
Okay, Tennessee. They went to the AFC Championship. Okay, Houston. Jacksonville in 17. Yep. Oh my God. No way. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That is funny. I would have never put that together. I'm like, there's no way. You're right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think he got runway too because, it's the whole, Andrew Luck retired 2 weeks before the season. Yada,
I
yada,
don't care
yada.
about any of that. I think he's someone who definitely benefits from just having, because you notice no matter what happens, we're not getting any of the, according to sources, this is what's happening in Indianapolis. And I don't believe that there's nothing untoward happening, right? I think in every NFL franchise, there's something happening where once someone gets fired, we're going to hear all the stories, like all of the nightmare tales, like as we're seeing with Gerard Mayo this year, where the minute he's out, everyone's kind of just like, yeah, these were all the things that were happening that you didn't know about. Here's why. And that never really happens with Chris Ballard. I just think he has really well-placed media friends. I think, Joe Douglas, formerly of the Jets, was the same way. I thought he was someone who he played the media really well, and no one ever had anything negative to say about him until he got axed. Then all of a sudden, the stories came out.
I am waiting for who the Jets hire, and it's gonna be Matt Nagy or Rex Ryan.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting for that to happen. Like one of those two things is just gonna come true there. But with them, the two, it's so weird what the Jets are doing, where it's like, hey, they've Ron Rivera, and then he's watching practice. It's like, we all know Jeff Albrecht's gone, but that's just that's another weird one going on too.
Weird. Yeah.
I just like to say that with Chris Ballard, just because I think the Colts are just the only good thing the Colts have going for them is that guy that comes on Twitter, Seth, that sings those songs every week before their games, like the custom Colts anthems.
Oh, no, I haven't seen them.
I'll send you one, but
Okay.
there's just and the other team, like the hot seats too for next year. Like I think Indy's gonna be hot. I think if Miami had not done contract extensions, both guys would have been gone. That's bad player management.
Miami is in a weird spot too, because they should be good. They weren't, obviously. Their roster isn't very good though. That's the kind of problem. I don't love their roster. Reminds me of the Houston Texans, the 2011 Houston Texans, where they're kind of just top
minus the Letterman jackets.
Yeah, right. Minus the Letterman jackets, where their top end players, fantastic. They're guys that everyone, you're like, man, I wish we had a Jalen Waddle. I wish we had a Chop Robinson. I wish we had insert player here.
Jalen Ramsey.
There's just literally no one behind them though. You're like, oh yeah, we have Jalen Waddle and we have Tyreek Hill, and behind them we have Malik Washington. That's
River Craycraft.
Yeah, what are we doing? Oh, we have Jonnu Smith. He had a breakout year. Behind him, we have Durham Smythe. All right, I don't know. I think they're so interesting because I think they have really good starters, but a bad roster. So I can also see, their front office being, kind of on notice, like, hey, we kind of got to get this fixed. And it's interesting because people would say oh, but they only had one bad year. And I'm like, yes, but it is, you can just see the cracks. We saw the cracks even when they went, when they went to the playoffs last year. We saw this roster is not super good, or there's something weird going on here. And then they went out there and laid an absolute egg in Kansas City. Now, granted, a ton of people did that, but come on, Tua looked like he didn't even want to be out there. You know what I mean? It was too cold for him. Yeah, all right, cool. They're such a finesse team, and anytime you got to play them in the elements, it feels bad. And when all of the pieces aren't in place, McDaniel looks like he has no idea what to do, right? Obviously losing your quarterback hurts, but you couldn't even put together a functional offense. You still had Tyreek Hill. He was still out there. Jalen Waddle was still out there. You still had Devon Achane. These guys were all still out there, and not a thing was going on.
Man, it's a bad time to be a Miami sports fan right now. You got two of your star players just wanting to get out of town. Well, I think one was said in the heat of the moment, but one's really bad. I think Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, Jimmy Butler. He wants to go. He wants to go, and this isn't the first time he's done that. That's something that Jimmy kind of does, and that's why I never really understood when Heat fans were like, "Yeah, it's Jimmy's all in," and I'm like, Is he though? Because yeah, like historically hasn't been. Like, there's a reason he's played on so many teams, but that's just me.
Yeah. But no, the only other there's no other coaches right now where I'm like, okay, potential hot seat. I can see Cincinnati. I can see, which I still think the firing of Lou Anarumo really caught me off guard. But I think that's just kind of like, how
Someone needed to go. I think
exactly.
someone just
Someone
needed to
had to be
go.
the fall guy.
Yeah, and it had to be him. I think he'll get a job very quickly. I think I've seen people link him to Ben Johnson. They're like, oh yeah, Ben Johnson and Lou Anarumo worked together for a bit, so like that could be his DC pick. And I'm like, that would be fine. I think Lou Anarumo is a good coach. I know that Cincinnati's defense was bad this year, but I think they were bad from a personnel standpoint, not necessarily a coaching standpoint. You just kind of look at who they were working with. It's not a ton there.
They also did not. They're the team too. Like if you look at example with the draft, like we're just going to replace like Jesse Bates with like a draft pick.
Yeah.
And Von Bell and like Dax Hill really isn't worked out, and like Jordan Battle, like Jordan Battle's okay, but he's not like this like great caliber player that like you put all the
Day one of free agency last year, they were like, we're gonna get Geno Stone, and I'm like, he's a nice special teams player, but like he's not like a starting safety. He's not like someone we're gonna stick him out there and just be all right. Like and that bore out. He goes out there and he can't play the run, and everyone's like, what the hell? And it's like, yeah, but that's always who he was in Baltimore. He was their third safety for a reason. But
we're gonna replace Joe Mixon with Zach Moss and hope it works out.
Yeah, they had Chase Brown though, so like that worked out.
That's
for them.
where it's like,
fortunately, but man,
they got to pickle this offseason too, because like Jamar Chase, like there's no way he's doing what he did last season. No, if there's no new contract, he's
not showing up. Yeah, I think he needs an extension, and he's going to get his extension. T. Higgins is going to be interesting as well, because for a while I was like, there's no way they're going to sign T. Higgins. They can't afford it. But with all of him
and Chase have the same agent now.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh man, so if he is gonna get paid. Good for him. But they had drafted Jermaine Burton to be their their replacement. Though. But that guy, golly, he super uber talented. But goodness, it's a shame, because coming into the draft, everyone's like, yeah, if he's like locked in, someone is going to steal him. Someone's going to get him in the third or fourth round, and they're gonna like a fucking genius. If he's locked in. We see this year he wasn't locked in, and all of the concerns that people had coming into the draft all bore out. You're like, dang, this guy's like not really engaged. Like he's not really in. And as of earlier today, I had read that the incident that the incident that led to the coach's decision for him to sit in the final game, that came as a result of domestic violence. Like that's a bad look, so they drafted him to be like, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to move on from T, and we're going to have like a perimeter big threat receiver who can come down with the contested football. And that's just not really going to happen right now, because Jermaine Burton doesn't really seem like he's all that interested in being an NFL receiver.
Yeah. And then you have Yossi Vosh, but Yossi Vosh, I don't know if you can rely on him to be that, like go and be a true number two. He's a good like X guy, but I don't know if he can really be a wide receiver too.
I agree.
Yeah. But no, it's going to be a fascinating offseason. By the way, T. Higgins, when I say Arizona's got money, they're a team I worry about, just because if you think about it, you have Marvin Harrison Jr. You really tell me you're going to roll out Michael Wilson as your wide receiver too next year if you're the Cardinals?
I like Michael Wilson though. I
mean? You could be better. That's what.
I agree. I also think though, if they just give him a little time, continue to work through it. His biggest issue has just been injury. That was his issue in college.
Yeah.
And if he is right, I think he can be so good. I just need him to be right and make me look smart.
Yeah. It's gonna be a fun offseason. But before we go, I don't want to get too much into the games this weekend, but I'd rather play a game with you where we go through each playoff team and just put like a ranking of like how successful you think they could be in the playoffs. Like, sure. Say for example, I'm just gonna go to I'm just gonna go to standings. I'm gonna go to let's go to wild card. I'm gonna say first we're gonna go from 7-1. I'm gonna say the Denver Broncos.
1 and done.
Yeah,
they're gonna get killed.
It basically, I saw something. It was actually Wizard Kelly who said it, that apparently Josh Allen is a little bit weaker against Vance Joseph-led defenses. if you look at Bo Nix's numbers on the road, he beat up on really bad teams.
Yep.
The only teams he beat on the road, I think, were like the Raiders, the Saints, the Jets. He did beat the Buccaneers, but they did sweep the NFC South this year. And then he went to the Chargers and they played bad. He got killed in Baltimore against the Ravens. They're another one and done. Another one for me is Pittsburgh, who, good Lord,
Gosh, man, talk about backing into the playoffs.
What happened on Saturday? That I don't understand how a quarterback of Russell Wilson's caliber doesn't know to get out of bounds.
Yes, that was weird. Especially because even if it was a successful, because he lowered the shoulder, right? And you're like, oh, he's gonna try to run over a guy. What's the plan? What was then what? Pardon. Even if you successfully ran him over, you don't have enough time to get to the sideline, right? You ran him over, then what? You're now in the field of play. I just don't really understand what's going through his head. But I've realized with Russell Wilson, the late stage Russell Wilson, at least once a game he does something like that where I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? What was that? Because I remember the game last week against the Ravens when he's scrambling into the end zone and then trying to lower the shoulder on was it a Darius Washington who forced a fumble, and it was why did you try to lower the shoulder on him? You were 3 yards from the end zone. You were gonna plow him 3 yards into the end. That wasn't gonna happen. What was that decision?
Yeah. With them too, that was some of the worst clock management I had seen since the Chase Claypool game against Minnesota in 21.
Oh my gosh, when he was celebrating as the time is rolling down.
Dude,
holy cow.
30 seconds, go. You're just trying to win a game.
Goodness.
But yeah, no, there's a chance I could see this game being close, but at the end of the day, I think Baltimore just kind of shows everyone, the Ravens are who they are for a reason.
Yeah, easily.
LA Chargers, I'm going to say I think they're the one team here that I could see potentially going to the AFC Championship game. That's a wild card.
Interesting. I like their running game a lot. I don't know. I think they're so meh. They're a good team, but I think they're just a good team. They're they're a good team, but I don't know. They'll probably win a game and then lose in the divisional round and kind of move on from there and be okay, successful season, we're good. Moving on.
I just think they're going to be the one team that's not going to be afraid to go into Arrowhead if need be. That's the one thing
I can see that. Yeah, I think that works just because obviously division. I think anytime you have a divisional matchup, you can kind of just throw the records out, and division games are weird. They're always weird all the time. The Patriots were running with the Bills for 3.5 quarters. This year's Patriots were doing that.
Yeah.
Division games are weird. They're always going to be weird. We can, obviously if they get a chance to go to Arrowhead, I think that could be a interesting matchup there.
And then Houston, look, I don't believe too much in the Houston Texans just because, and also I love all the memes of CJ Stroud in his second year. And it's just this guy who looks like him, but he's heavier and he's in his 40s with cornrows. I think he's good. I just think their offensive line is terrible.
Yes. Yeah.
And he's an eco merchant as well.
Yes, I think he needs his emotional support receivers, which is fine. I'm not going to knock him for that. Their line being bad is actually kind of surprising to me, though, because I'm dang, why? These guys are still most of the guys are still here. They're just not really playing well. Drew Scruggs, their starting center. I thought he wasn't that good anyway, but I don't really understand that. Shaq Mason had been playing for them and he's been playing good individual ball. He was getting killed the other a few weeks back before he got hurt. I was okay, I don't really understand why that's happening. They had Kenyon Green, who's not very good. And then their tackles, you have Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard.
You still want him in New England?
Rotating in. Yes, I do. And Blake Fisher has been rotating in, but I just don't understand why they're bad because on paper, I like all of the players on the offensive line. You just kind of put them together and it looks like crap. But I also think that Stroud is holding the ball a little bit because he needs his emotional support receiver.
I didn't know I was going to, we found a podcast title. I'm going to say this with the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to say a simple 3-letter word. It's now or never for them. I think this is a year where if they don't win this year, if they don't get to the Super Bowl, I don't know when they will because that little monster is going to start that little doubt's going to start creeping into them.
I'm all in on the Ravens. Give me the Ravens. I'm
Oh,
all in. I'm all in.
I'm not saying I'm not doubting them. I'm just thinking with them this is like the perfect scenario for them to win it all.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're the team I think more than any other in the AFC's field. And yes, that includes Buffalo. I think if they match up with Kansas City in the championship game, I think they can put belt to ass, hot leather to ass in that game because I think their offense is so explosive. It's so
Mm-hmm.
multiple. They can just do it, right? They can just do it however they want to do it. And I think the Chiefs have a really good defense, but I think their defense does really well against teams that they can make one dimensional. If they're like, hey, you can't throw it on us, like, all right, cool, we're gonna win this game because like you can't throw it on us and your running game's not that good to like threaten us. I think the Ravens have the kind of offense where they're like, well, you can try to stop our, you can like put a dedicated effort to stopping our run. And it's like, yeah, but we're gonna make it happen, with our receivers. Again, that's granted, that's if Zay Flowers plays, though. I think their offense is very different without him. He is someone who opens up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is someone that they're going to need back ASAP. So just make it through this week, and then you plow through Pittsburgh, and then from there get Zay Flowers back, and I think they can play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think he goes Saturday. I think you don't play him. You can win other ways. Mark Andrews is also getting hot at the right time as well. With the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to say this. Even if they lose in the divisional round or lose in the AFC Championship game, I don't think it's a failed season for them just because of their expectations being
the expectations
so low.
were yeah, and really, I think them getting this far in the first place is a testament to Josh Allen because like he is the little engine that. Also, James Cook. I don't want to disrespect James Cook. He's been very good this year, but like Josh Allen is just like independently willing them to like into games, and it's like, all right, I guess if we go where the quarterback goes. And again, I've seen that happen. I'm obviously not going to compare him to Tom Brady because then people get all weird and bent out of shape. But we've seen Tom Brady do similar things where he just kind of like willed a team into a spot he had absolutely no business being.
Yeah, I always think of that 2019 as I wish I had like had this podcast back in the day, and I wish I had the same belief I did like now, like where it's like the predictability of the team because I remember that whole everyone thinks we suck and all this stuff. I say this multiple times on the show. We should have looked at that in the moment and said, oh, they're not losing another football game.
Yeah.
Like you put that self doubt in them. Meanwhile, Josh, he's just going to find a way to win. Basically, he got engaged and just became the NFL's version of Goku. I don't know what it is.
I love it. Yeah, I'm not rooting for the Bills, but I'm not rooting against them, and that's a rare thing for a division rival. Most division rivals I'll actively root against, but the Bills, I'm like, okay, whatever. We'll see what y'all can do.
Yeah, that's what I am. That's what I am with Buffalo right now. I'm like, let's see what you can do, and then when you lose, I get to post the memes and laugh.
Yeah, exactly. And if you win, that's okay. That's fine too.
Basically, it's like they've waited long enough. I give them their roses, give them their flowers.
Yeah.
And then Kansas City, I'm going to say this right now: if they play Big Ten football, they will go a far way. Low scoring, just defense keeps them in games. They win like a
Mahomes doesn't need to be special; he just needs to be good enough. Yeah, I agree.
Or they're going to have a game like I'm saying this. I've been saying this all year. Travis Kelce's going to have like 10 receptions and like 120 yards and like 2 touchdowns in the divisional round. And
you know what I'm a take I've been brewing in my mind. I wonder if they're not a team that can go out there and get absolutely shellacked, like just out of nowhere. They just like play in divisional round. They go out there and then just get absolutely whooped. Just because they're a good team, obviously. Yes. They play these low-scoring games, obviously. I think we're all just kind of waiting for the bottom to fall out. And I wonder if it's one of those, like, we just wait till we get to the playoffs and we just watch the bottom fall out. Almost like the 2012 Patriots, where that wasn't like a great team, and then they went out there and they lost to Baltimore, and you're like, yeah.
They also escaped by Houston, I believe, in the divisional round.
Yeah, you're like, okay. Like, you couldn't be mad at it because you're like, this team isn't very good in the first place, and they had no business here. Almost like the 2013 Patriots when they went out there and got killed in Denver, and you're like, yeah, should have happened because like Austin Collie can't be a starting receiver in the AFC Championship game, and he was. So I can kind of tell you what the state of the roster was like.
So this right here is it's from this Grey Cup this year. That's my pass from the CFL. Obviously, you're UFL, I'm CFL in the offseason. But I started covering the team in 2023. That year, they went 16-2. Top of the world, boom, 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 best record in the league, tied the best record in league history. The way the CFL playoffs work is there's the East and West semis, there's the East and West final, and then the Grey Cup's the Super Bowl. If you finish in first place like Toronto did, you get a bye to the East Final. They got that. They lost 38-17 in the East Final. And we all said they had their worst day to have their worst game. And that's what I think is going to happen to Kansas City.
Yeah, yep. I can see that happening.
They just have a day. It's not on. I'm saying like the whole thing with Travis. That's why too, because I have a fun, like someone came up with on Twitter, but I'm following suit with it. Chargers, Bills, and Ravens win. Ravens beat the Bills. Chargers beat the Chiefs. And then in the Harbaugh Bowl rematch in the AFC Championship game, John lays belt to Jim's ass.
Yes, absolutely. I can see that happening as well.
Yeah,
that would be fun. That'd be a fun scenario.
I also want to. I would also like to see Kansas City lose in the divisional round just to see what the media machine that is like ESPN and the NFL Network, how they self-combust.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
Pat's Mahomes not here. Like, will Tony Romo be crying his eyes out in the press box? Will Chris Collinsworth be like MIA for like 6 months?
He's gonna take bereavement.
Oh my god! And this isn't a knock on Patrick. Like, I like Patrick the player and all this stuff.
But goodness gracious, they make it hard to watch as a fan of any other team, especially if your team is playing them, because then you're just like, I just got to hear about how great Mahomes is, and I'm like, well, what about my team who's also in this game?
Yeah, like
not my team. My team sucks, but like when we were good.
I mean, when we were good, I always remember Ian Eagle and Dan Fouts would call our games, and I feel like Fouts would find the
Dan Fouts. Just my goodness, that guy hated us.
He hated Tom Brady.
Tom Brady would throw a pass directly at a receiver's feet, and he'd be like, "Ugh, I just can't believe there's no flag for ground." And you're like, "What are you talking about?" Oh my goodness!
I remember they did the Miracle Miami game, and then they did the first game of week 2, and they brought the game up like 20 times in the first half. And I'm like, guys, like, come on, like,
we get it.
Yeah. Green Bay Packers. I'm going to say this right now. If this matchup intrigues the hell out of me, because Philadelphia fans, and I've seen you, I think it was on Blue Sky where you did this, where there's like Eagles fans where it's like, we're winning, but we want Nick Sirianni fired.
Yeah.
Is there a world where if either team gets killed, their coach could potentially get a warm seat?
No shot. No shot. Yeah. I think LaFleur is as like entrenched as like, when I think of coaches that have like ultimate job security, I think it's Andy Reid and LaFleur and McVay. I think those are like the three guys who, and obviously, Tomlin, but I think Tomlin
McDermott's getting in that category as well.
Oh yeah. With McDermott, there was some rumblings last year where everyone was kind of just like, if they suck, he might have to go.
Where I never really seemed that way, though. It was more, I think, the national media doing.
Well, that. Yes, I'm talking about nationally.
Oh yeah,
not necessarily Buffalo fans, because they love their team, they love their coach, and I respect that. But I think Matt LaFleur is like pretty locked in. Like I can't imagine a scenario where he's on the hot seat. And Sirianni, I think, has too much success as a team. His teams are too successful for you to realistically be like, hey, we're gonna give this guy the old heave ho,
especially big Italian security blanket.
His emotional support security. Yeah. I can't imagine he's on the hot seat, even though I know the fans are very tired of him, and I absolutely get that. That guy is, man, he's like the worst person just started coaching, and you're like, God, how are you? Like, he's such a buffoon.
I have a better one. He's a fan who won that contest to coach a team for a day, but he's still doing it.
And now he's just running with it because they keep winning. I can't imagine that scenario. I think that's going to be a good game. I think Green Bay has a better shot in it than not. I think I might actually have them favored. I like Green Bay a lot. I think their offense is really good. I think with Philly,
Schefter being a shit disturber too and posting that Jalen Hurts hasn't cleared protocol yet, and it's just like, you're doing that just to rile people.
Yeah, he's gonna play. Like, be fine. He's gonna play. I think the Eagles, they run really hot and cold, and if they run cold this weekend, they're in trouble.
Yeah, like I don't think if the Eagles lose again, they're not going to be like, the fans are going to want Sirianni gone, but then it's going to be the same old thing. Like, I think they would have to miss the playoffs at this point in order for him to get fired.
Agree. And I think it would have to look bad. It would have to be one of those, like, he would have to look like Gerard Mayo for him to get canned, is what I'm thinking.
Yes. And then a matchup with Washington and Tampa is very intriguing, because there's a subsection of people who are thinking that if Tampa didn't make the playoffs, the Todd Bowles would be gone. But he's doing so much with what he's got. And I'm ready to say this because I started saying this. Is Mike Evans a top 5 receiver in NFL history, or top 10?
Man,
he finds a way.
Yeah, I think he's up there as far as production goes, but like I don't know, like I think it's hard to say just because like you said top five, and I thought of five guys immediately that I'd prefer.
Then he's not. That's it.
Yeah, and then
But he
you
is a
said
gold
top
jacket
10.
one
I'm
day.
like, yo, most certainly. Yeah, he's going to get fitted for a jacket 5 years after whenever the hell he's done. But I don't know. I think he is probably like top five most underrated. I feel like
Underappreciated.
we don't talk about him enough when we talk about like the best receivers in the league because like he's still one of those.
Yeah, he's still consistently performing. This game here though is so intriguing because I think basically Tampa's got to keep up with what Washington does because let's be honest, Tampa's defense is just not good right now.
Yeah,
Banged up too. And I don't know if Whitfield's going to play this week or not. They're just banged up at their DB especially. They've been getting killed at defensive back all year long. And if they can if this game's going to be like a fun one. Like I'm glad this is Sunday Night Football, so it's going to be fun. But we'll have to see what happens. And then, man, the Vikings, is the clock striking midnight?
no, nah, I think they just played a really good opponent and shit got weird. But I don't know.
And
only
JJ
because
McCarthy looks like Revenge of the Sith Anakin.
okay, I feel like I've never gotten a really good look at him. I'm like, why do you look like that? His hair was long, and I'm like,
Yeah.
is this just like what you look like now? Because like you didn't look like that at Michigan. But all the same, I think
When he got to the sorry to cut you off, but my favorite one was when he showed up at the facility the next day with Dallas Turner, and he basically someone put the caption, "Mom, I threw up."
Dallas Turner. Oh my goodness, I am ready for him.
He's
ready
really
for him to have
hard to
a
come
breakout.
along the last for a while.
He started turning the corner in like the middle of November. I'm just ready for him to like get the opportunities because he's not, and I understand why he's not. Right, you have Grenard over there; he's playing really well. You're not taking him off the field, and then you have AVG. You're not taking him off the field, so it's like.
He almost had another pick six on Sunday.
Oh my god! Right, that would have been a
it.
game changer. Would have been a game changer. I think they just, they played a really good opponent and they had a bad day. Also, it was a divisional game. Division games are always weird.
Yeah, I agree, and also too, I want to see what I want to see what Cam Bynum cooks up for. I want him to get an INT off Stafford.
For the celebration. Yeah,
I don't know, man. I love the White Chicks one, but man, the Camp Rock at a game
that was fun. Yeah,
I'm like, if you're Seattle, just throw the towel.
My wife caught it before I caught it. She was just like, "Is that Camp Rock?" I'm like, "No." And then they're like, "Oh, it's the Camp Rock celebration." I'm like, "Oh."
And then the Rams, look, they're looking good. Braden Fisk, one of the steals of the draft from last year.
Yeah.
Jared
Verse, my goodness, what a player. Holy shit, what a player. He's so good. I'm just like watching it. I was like, I think it was like a month ago I was watching him and I was just like, holy shit, how is he so good? Like, just out of nowhere, just mad good at the sport. And I'm like, cool. And then they have Byron Young, who obviously was really good last year. I still think he's really good. I think that D-line is a force.
They are. But this is the kind of game, though, where I feel like if it gets to high scoring, I think it favors Minnesota more than it favors LA. But if it keeps it to low scoring, then it goes the other way.
I think Minnesota needs to score 25 and they will win the game. I just don't think the Rams can do that, even though they have the kind of offense that could do that, right? You have Cooper Kupp, you have Tyler Higbee's off injury, you have Puka Nacua, obviously, you have Kyron Williams, the running back. Yeah. You have all of these guys, but that's not the kind of team they really are. They're not like explosive. They kind of wear you down. They do what they do and they score points, but they're not like, you're not like getting the ball and knowing like, all right, cool, they're going to go 4 plays and go 80 yards here. That's not really what they do, where Minnesota can.
Yeah. And I feel like too, we're waiting for that moment. And also too, I still think that stuff with Kevin O'Connell, where it's just like, oh, teams are calling about him and teams are doing this. It's teams are calling like, oh, they want to trade for Kevin O'Connell. It's like, okay, they're not having that happen. No. That's basically like saying like, hey, I would love to have Patriots season tickets. You right now, you're like, hey, I want to sleep a full 8 hours. It's just there's certain things in life like you want to have happen.
That's real good. I'm real happy that you want that. Yeah, not gonna happen. Agree. Yeah, I think it would be foolish to trade him. I don't really think trading coaches makes a ton of sense anymore anyway. Because you have to replace them. Yeah. And if you have a really good coach, why would I want to make more work for me? Like, I have a good coach. Like, I'm just going to keep my good coach.
I'll throw in a third example for fun because we know we always drop a reference, but it's like saying too, if the third member of squad goals she's like, hey, I want to sit front row at every Eras Tour concert when it was going on thing. It was just these things don't happen.
Not
And that's
gonna
not
happen.
it's not shade. It's just that's just life. But you know what? It's I don't know. And then, but because I think Kevin O'Connell at this point, I know everyone's going to like, oh, Dan Quinn for Coach of the Year. I really think it's between Kevin O'Connell and Sean McDermott. I
I
think
think
those
it's
two.
Kevin O'Connell. If I
Yeah.
had to vote, that's where it would go because he took Sam Darnold and fashioned a 14-win team out of that. That's insane.
I don't have a hot take. I don't know how hot this is, but I had a thing on a player on one team has a better case for DPOY than a player on the same team. I almost think Cam Hayward has a better case than TJ Watt for this year.
Yeah, he's disruptive. He's disruptive from the interior. He's really pushing the pocket. Where I think TJ Watt benefits, obviously he's a really good individual pass rusher.
F the play up kind of guy.
Yeah, I think
Fuck
though
the play up. He'll go in
he
there and just
really benefits from having Highsmith on the other side. Yeah, I think he's obviously a phenomenal pass rusher, and they obviously feed off of each other.
or
But it
big
helps when
linebacker.
they're just not just moving. They're not just sliding the protection your way. They can't. Alex Highsmith is going to get back there. And he's going to make some trouble, and Cam Hayward is obviously benefiting from both of those. So I don't know who's in the running for Defensive Player of the Year this year. I would assume Trey Hendrickson because he's the sack leader, but like I don't know, he wasn't like I don't know. I think those are the kind of awards in general go to teams that win, and Cincinnati just didn't do that enough. So I can't really see that being a thing.
I'm going to look up FanDuel just for a quick second because I actually want to see the odds because that starts to lean. But I do know though, once the votes get casted, they pull the betting. Like you can't bet on it anymore.
Yeah.
Where were we? NFL. Let me look this up because folks, I love doing these things on the fly. Hypothetical matchups. Also, Super Bowl MVP right now. The favorite is Patrick Mahomes at plus 450. I would almost take a snap at Lamar Jackson at plus 800. Okay, yeah, I think they already pulled him. Yeah. Although for the Super Bowl, if you really want to go for it, Not Like Us is plus 210 for first song.
There's no way he plays it though. There's no way, right? Like you can't call him a pedophile in the Super Bowl. I mean, you can, but like, will they let him?
Oh my God, I don't know that. I'm excited for that, but also I would have loved to have seen him in Toronto. It's just tickets were so goddamn expensive. But going back to Minnesota though, it's just one of those things where like you said, Kevin O'Connell's led them and brashed them. I only say Sean McDermott because I had him as my pick going into the season because I was like Buffalo's going to be the same old team. They're going to be fine. Yep. It's like everyone this year going like, oh, Dan Campbell could win it. And I'm like, yeah, Dan Campbell went 15-2. They were expected to do that. Dan Campbell went 17-0, and they literally just killed everyone along the way. They'd be fine.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being objective and honest, it's probably Andy Reid just getting the 15 wins out of that or 15 wins out of that team is, I mean. Because and I know you have Patrick Mahomes, so he's, everyone's like, yeah, but he has Patrick Mahomes. I'm like, yeah, but like the rest of everyone else isn't really a ton going on.
Their tackle play is atrocious.
My goodness, so bad, like just so bad. They're playing, Joe Tooney, a career left guard over. They're playing him at left tackle. They're just kind of like patching holes. Isaiah Pacheco was out. Trey Smith is also amazing. Future Patriot.
Cadlick meme right there.
Patriot. But I think he won't get it for the same reason that Bill never really got it. Cause like once you're up there, once you're like the guy, it's time to give it to other people. It's also the same reason I think Josh Allen has a legitimate chance to win MVP, because if we're just looking at it from like a number standpoint, it's Lamar and it's no one else. Like it's Lamar by a lot, but he just got it last year. He already has 2. He just got it last year. I can see them just being like, all right, let's give it to someone else.
Yeah, my other thing with Josh Allen too is just the fact that he has so many, first player in NFL history to like rush for 3 touchdowns, throw touchdowns. The fact it's like, first one in the game to catch a ball, run a ball in, throw a touchdown pass. The game against the 49ers, honestly, that was my solidifying case where I'm like, yeah, it's like Vince Carter over Josh Allen's got it locked up. That's what I had with him. Also, too, because I feel like if he were to do that, it just solidifies him even more as a player. Look, before we wrap up, one more question for you. I'm going to pivot footballs for a second.
Okay.
Who's your national championship matchup?
Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I think they beat Texas. I know. Hot take. And Penn State.
I'm going to go Ohio State, but I'm going to go Notre Dame. I just think that
really.
I just think that like what we've seen on a Marcus Freeman, sure they played Indiana, but what we saw him able to do, and I know it was Gunnar Stockton in Georgia, which we just now know
Right.
Gunnar Stockton wasn't ready. There's something with Notre Dame too. Also, like I said, I'm just waiting for the egg to crack on James Franklin. The whole big
Yeah.
game narrative thing. If he does get to the national championship, though, I think that does change. I just think, look, Marcus Freeman is solidifying his case of why he's this great head coach and turning around the program. Meanwhile, with Ohio State and Texas, I'm sorry, I wanted Arizona State to win that game so badly.
Yeah. But like,
You finally got to see Cam Scatterbo too. Do you see what I was
yeah, I
talking
know,
about?
right? He was the talk of the day too. That was like everyone was real excited. I don't know. I think Ohio State is so interesting because like they win in routes, and I just think there's something to that. Like I think great, the saying, good teams win, great teams cover. I think they're a great team, and I'm like, I can absolutely see them. And I know that everyone's like, well, Texas is Texas is ranked higher. They they play better. And they have better quarterback play. I don't know. I think there's something to be said about a team that wins blowouts.
Yeah, like it's like literally it's 53.5. They're 5.5-point favorites. Here's the other thing too this year as well. Like Ohio State's just look, they already took one team's lunch money from the SEC.
Yep.
They went into thing and killed them. They went into the Rose Bowl, which I still say this. That's a bucket list sporting event for me to go to one day.
Yeah, I know, right? Like there's so much history, and you're just like, all right, cool. I just know that like it would be my one trip for like 10 years. It'd be like, oh, I took a vacation. We went to the Rose Bowl, and I have done nothing since. Like, I think it would bankrupt me.
I think from what I've seen though, too, tickets aren't, and also that's the other thing too with Monday because we know about the terrible situation going on in Los Angeles right now.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw it, but the Monday wildcard game may be moved to State Farm
Arizona.
Stadium.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the plan B. And the only other one too that people brought up with that stadium is what if the Rams and the Chargers both make and host the championship Sunday? The only way for that to be possible would be if the Chargers were playing like the Steelers or the Broncos.
Right. Right.
Which, good Lord, one of those games would just suck.
Yeah. Yeah, because where are the Chargers? The Chargers are the 5 seed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's not going to happen. They're not going to host the game.
People just think of it, someone on Reddit brought it up and it kind of just made its rounds online where it's like, what if this happens? And I'm just like, I don't know. But yeah, no, I know what you mean though with the Rose Bowl where it's like I saw Peach Bowl tickets were going cheap, but Rose Bowl, yeah, that's like the one thing where it's like, oh, what'd you do this New Year's? Oh, after the Rose Bowl, how was it? I'm broke.
Yeah.
But anyway, guys, I think that's gonna wrap it up. We covered a lot of bases, talked a lot of football, a lot of fun. Next week, though, squad goals are back. The three of us are back.
Yeah.
Someone's been in the room all off season. Sophie's gonna break down more than we know already. And you know what? We're here to talk Patriots all off season. Why? Because we hate our team, but we love our team. And get yourself an emotional support wide receiver while you're at it, right?
Everyone needs one. Get Drake May one.
Please. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.